Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of the BrandMe Spotlight podcast. Thank you for joining us today and listening to this call. So today I've got Joyce Osei. Is that the right way to say it, by the way?
It is Joyce
Okay.
Osei. Yeah.
Osei.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Joyce is on a mission to inspire, impact, and innovate with visionary leaders in technology and entrepreneurs. She is an equity, diversity, and inclusion consultant and a published author. So, for the last 10 years, Joyce has worked to increase the representation of women in male dominated industries by supporting leaders to attract, retain, and develop their female talent. Joyce has worked across industry sectors, including tech, banking and finance, professional services, and legal and insurance. So, welcome to the Spotlight podcast, Joyce. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for inviting me, Dion. Really glad to be here.
Brilliant. So I'm going to kick off with the questions, and we'll just go through them one by one. And I'm pretty sure you have got a lot of amazing advice and insights to share. So let's think about your personal journey and tell us what inspired you to pursue your business into inclusion and diversity.
Yeah, so I was working in a company that was focused on gender diversity. And a key part of my role at that time was working with the senior leaders across different sectors to help them attract, retain, and develop their female talent. So, one of the ways in which they could do that was through the sector specific conferences that we used to organise. And at one of these events, the speaker was talking about taking control of your career trajectory. And that message really resonated with me at that time because I'd always wanted to run my own business, but I just didn't know what that looked like, especially with my background being in business development and client relationships. I just didn't know how could I build a business around that skill set in particular. But what happened was around that time as well, I was observing that there were many women that were setting up businesses in order to serve that whole kind of diversity and inclusion space. And what I noticed was that a lot of them either grappled with the whole kind of the business development side of things, or they didn't have the capacity to be doing the business development or going out and about networking. Or yeah, some people just didn't have the skill set and they just didn't want to get involved in that side of the business. So for me, it was spotting that gap in the market and being able to contribute to these female business owners at the time that wanted to serve in the D&I space. And yeah, for me, it was around combining my experience in business development, but also the expertise I'd been acquiring in the D&I space that led me to start my business.
Amazing, amazing. So thinking about that startup
Mm.
and where you are now, what are the 3 biggest lessons you think you've learned about starting a business?
Yeah, I would say, well, the first biggest lesson I learned is around, having a plan.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, having a plan, but also having that understanding that where you start in your business isn't necessarily where you end up. So I started with um, supporting and serving female business owners, but actually over time that has evolved to it's not specifically female business owners, it's actually more visionary leaders that
Mm.
want that support. um, well, around content now, because that's how my business has evolved. So it's
Yeah.
supporting visionary leaders to help them diversify their content in some areas.
Okay.
So yeah, I'd say that's the first one. Have a plan, but also just understand that where you start isn't where you end up. Um, One of the other things, big lesson that I learned is, yeah, you can't do it all by yourself.
Mm.
In the early stages of my my business. Obviously, budget was really tight, and so I ended up having to do everything myself in all kind of areas. But that is just, it's not workable, because eventually, it does have an impact on your health, and it does have an impact on your relationships. And so being able to get support around, whether it's social media, or whether it's with the marketing, or whether it's with the accounting side of things, just being able to get support in those areas that don't bring you joy, essentially, rather than trying to work through it and save money, or save money. Look to get yourself some support where you can.
Okay.
And I'd say that the last lesson that I learned, there's so many lessons, but the three that I will share is that everything takes longer than you anticipate. Especially if you're an over-optimistic person, which I am. So it's really good to build in extra time, particularly, with any goals or milestones that you're working towards.
Brilliant. And I wholeheartedly agree with all of those. I am constantly pivoting, as you well know.
Yes.
I think I've sometimes it's like twice in a year I can think, oh, I need to change this, I need to do something different, I need to look at a different way of doing things. And as you said, when you start a business, getting the help that you need in the beginning isn't always possible, but striving to ask for help as much as you can is going to help you move forward quicker.
Absolutely. And I understand that bit about pivoting. I think, especially, in a post-pandemic world, I felt like I was a pivoting princess.
I love that.
Yeah, there was a lot of pivoting in 2020.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I guess you say the word princess. It's kind of like, the princess and the pea. You're not kind of satisfied. No, no, this isn't comfortable. I need to move. I need to see something different.
Yes, there's someone calls it the pincushion effect.
Okay.
So you sit down, but you've got to move, and you've got to move again, because you're sat on a cushion that has loads of pins in it.
Completely agree with that. Completely agree with that.
Yeah.
So how has the support from your family and friends been instrumental in maintaining your business so far?
Gosh, that's a great question. I'd say it's been everything. Having a very supportive husband and family is priceless, because what that has meant is that it doesn't take away all your concerns, but it does hugely reduce them, especially, when you've got a young family. When I first started my business, my children were very young, probably around, I think my eldest was around 7 or so, 6, 7. And so, being able to have that support, and whether it's the pick up or the drop off, or me being able to get to meetings or new client meetings on time, but knowing that my husband would be able to look after the children. And that was just a huge it was a huge support. It just enabled me to be able to focus on what I can do with my clients, and being able to create different offerings as well with my clients. It gave me that space to be able to do that.
Do you think it would have made it a little bit more difficult if you didn't have that support?
Hugely. It would have. I wouldn't have been able to do half the things that I've done if I didn't have the support. And interestingly, although friends and family, or like my husband and my immediate family, they don't necessarily know the ins and outs of my business and what I do, but also just having that emotional support there, you know, when times are really challenging, their words of encouragement have helped me get through some really challenging times as well whilst running business.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and obviously, you know, it's not always yeah, sunshine and roses, but um yeah, it's been having their support there has just made it's given me that space to be able to focus on my business when I need to focus on it and be there for my clients when I need to be there for them.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Yeah, I agree with that. I know for myself personally, it would have made things a lot harder if I didn't have that support as well. And
Yeah.
especially when you've got children.
Yes.
It's hard enough when you don't have children.
Yeah.
When you have children, it's even harder. So yeah,
Yes.
I agree with that wholeheartedly as well. So thinking about your expertise and your skills, what knowledge and skills have you taken from previous roles that have supported you in running your business?
I would say the skill set around, yeah, client relationships, building client relationships and business development has really, yeah, helped me in running my business because I'm I'm not one of those people that shies away from picking up the phone and making lots of calls if I need to, because actually that's where I started my career in media sales. Um, and that was selling classified advertising. And what that meant was that I was making huge volumes of calls back in the day. And so that, yeah, it's not something that I'm afraid of. And I know that from speaking with some other business owners, you know, getting on the phone or reaching out to people on LinkedIn is not something that comes with ease. It's not something that feels comfortable. But for me, I think that has been such a valuable skill to have. And it's helped me build really, really valuable relationships. And also, yeah, being able to, you know, the ability of engaging stakeholders, which I was doing in all my previous roles prior to starting my business as well. You know, speaking to senior leaders at different departments and being able to really gain their understanding of, you know, what some of their challenges are, and then yeah, being able to support them in trying to overcome those challenges with, you know, whatever offering it might have been at that time.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that those skill sets have really helped me in running my business. And
Yeah.
yeah, one of the things that people often compliment me on is how I'm really good at just sort of staying in touch with people. And yeah, it's not something I often think about because I just, you know, you might I go through my LinkedIn periodically and think, oh gosh, I haven't spoken to this person for a while. And I sort of set aside maybe like a Friday in the morning or something, like a Friday half day, or Friday morning or Friday afternoon, and just will send messages to people that I haven't spoken with for a while and reach out to them just to see what's happening in their world. And I think that has been amazing because you end up connecting or reconnecting with people you haven't spoken with. And just by sharing what I'm up to or the projects I'm working on, or they even sharing what they are working on, we then begin to see what's kind of possible or what the synergies are. And then that turns into more conversations, which sometimes ends up in a great piece of work.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, you're talking about that skill in particular, that kind of sales skill, I think is
Mm,
something that a lot of business owners struggle with. And I know it's something I struggle with. I didn't have a problem talking to people.
yes,
The problem I had was the fact that I had to sell myself. And
yes,
obviously that's why I um I I really am passionate about personal branding, because if you don't understand how to sell yourself and what it is about you that people will be attracted to,
Yes.
it just makes it more challenging to do it. So the fact that you kind of had that on
Mm.
the front foot already
Yeah.
was a great bonus, definitely.
Yeah.
So can you share a specific project or accomplishment that you are particularly proud of, and why?
Yeah. Yeah. So there was one project that I've been working on, and it's, with a tech company, and they have a well-being platform. And when I started working with that particular client, the content that they had was great. It's all about people sharing their lived experiences on a variety of different kind of well-being topics. And what I found, what was missing, because that's the question I always ask is, who's missing from the conversation? What perspective are we not hearing here? And for me, there was a gap because it wasn't very diverse in terms of the people sharing their stories. Although their stories were all very valid, I thought that a great way to be able to add value is also hearing the stories and the lived experiences of people from, minoritized backgrounds as well. So, yeah, people of color, but also people from LGBT backgrounds, from the different diversity strands. Um, and so, by working with that particular client on that platform, we were able to, diversify the content on there, whether it was through, videos or blogs or even the podcasts. Um, we were able to increase the diversity, I'd say probably by about 75%.
Wow.
And what was really amazing about it is the fact that when, giving people that space to be able to share their story and their perspectives adds value to others as well, because they wouldn't ordinarily get access to that perspective.
Mm.
And the feedback is that it really does, it helps increase empathy, particularly in the workplace. And it also gives insight as well. So when you've got um, senior leaders with people from diverse backgrounds on a team, some of the stories that people share have helped to give them insight on how best to manage the team, if that makes sense.
Mm. Yeah, I guess, with certain companies, if they have um, a ownership structure which is of one particular persuasion,
Mm,
it's kind of, they, not that it's necessarily deliberate, but they don't generally tend to think about, am I being diverse? It's not the first question that I guess would come into their minds. Are we looking at everybody's perspective or different
mm,
perspectives?
mm.
And the fact that you are able to enhance what they do and
Yes,
give that variety to what they do by showing them that there are other perspectives,
yes.
I'm sure has had a really positive effect on what it is they're doing and who it is they're actually reaching.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think I can give a couple of examples as well
Mm.
with that. So, for example, there was one lady that she's a black woman that kind of shared her experience of being the only black person in the team and some of the impact that has had on her. And her name is a West African name,
Mm.
and it's what she's found is that people find that name difficult to pronounce, and she got to a stage where she just accepted that.
Mm.
But then she shared a story about when it was during the pandemic and everything went online, and she would um, join these online events and was trying to contribute in the chat. And what she actually noticed was that even then she was being passed over, and people would go for, you know, the names that they can pronounce, the British sounding names.
Mm.
And the impact of that, you know, it's one thing to experience that in the workplace itself, you know, face to face. But for her, it took her aback experiencing it online when she was actively trying to contribute and, you know, comment on whatever the speaker had said. But
Mm.
whoever was facilitating would skip over her comments and then go to the names that were easier to pronounce. And I think by her even sharing that story, it gave people that insight to be more aware of how they behave, whether it's in person or online.
Mm.
So it's that inclusion piece. By behaving like that, you're not being inclusive in the workplace. Whether it comes from a place where you feel embarrassed and you don't think that you'd be able to pronounce their name properly. But actually, the impact of that behavior is far reaching. And so, people sharing stories like that, that's just one example. Um, I think that it's really helped shift people's perceptions and also given people access to perspectives they would never have had or been
Mm.
aware of. And they're for making them, yeah, increasing their awareness about their behaviours, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess, we all um take things for granted to a certain extent.
Mm,
And, you know, it, it's about being able to communicate respectfully, but honestly as well, and just saying, um, maybe trying to pronounce the name, saying like, I'm apologizing if I didn't pronounce it properly. So if you tell me
exactly.
what it is, and
Yeah,
then you can just move on. But it's
exactly.
kind of like that elephant in the room. You don't want to step on or insult somebody by saying it wrong, but
Yeah,
it's understandable if they don't understand how to say it properly. Just ask the question. How do I pronounce
exactly.
your name properly? How I'd love, want to join you in the conversation. How do we pronounce your name? Just you want to just say it for us, and that's it. It's done.
That's it. It sounds so simple, doesn't it?
Mm.
But I think people, whether it's fear, whether it's embarrassment, they make it bigger than what it is. And then I guess they make it about them, and they don't see the impact that actually has on the other person.
Yeah.
So even if you do feel embarrassed about it, it's just a question. How do I pronounce your name? You've made a comment on X, Y, and Z. How do I pronounce your name just so I can get it right?
Mm.
And I think people will, you know, if I was that person, I would appreciate that rather than be ignored and then skipped over
Yeah.
when
Exactly.
I'm trying to contribute to a conversation online, let alone in person.
Mm. Yeah.
So yeah,
None of us wants to be ignored
no,
in
we all
those
want to belong,
situations.
don't we? We want
Yeah.
to be a part of a team, or part of things.
Mm. Exactly. So, um, based on your own entrepreneurial insights and thinking about your journey so far, if there's one thing you could go back and do over, what would it be?
Oh, that's a big question. I have to come up with a big answer.
Yes, you do. We
uh,
like big answers.
Big answers to big questions, yeah. I would say if there's one thing I could go back to and do, I would say it's that piece around finding out what my purpose is. You can find that out early enough. That helps a great deal. I mean, for me, I really got clear around my purpose. Um, it was sort of in 2019, and it was that piece around storytelling. So I'd been writing my first children's book, which it's very much around that whole kind of tackling underrepresentation. So it was inspired by my Barbadian and Ghanaian heritage, and increasing that representation of African Caribbean characters in children's stories. And actually, it took me 8 years to get to that point of writing my book and getting it published. But all the while, that whole thing around tackling underrepresentation and storytelling had always been there.
Mm.
But it became clearer after my book was published, which was in 2020. And it was during that year, and it also happened to be the year of the pandemic. That's where I really got clear on, the fact that storytelling is a key part of what it is that I do and how I serve my clients.
Mm.
Yeah, and so if I was able to know that earlier, I think that would have helped a great deal. But like I said, I've shared with you where I started my business from, and the storytelling aspect didn't fit into, not that it didn't fit into it, it didn't come up at all because I'd yeah, I'd started from a different place. But over time, and that goes back to what I was saying, where you start isn't necessarily where you end up.
Mm. Yeah, very much so. Very much so. And you know how much I love storytelling.
Yes.
How much I push stories.
It's all part of personal branding, isn't it? That's the key part.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the key way in which we all communicate.
Yes.
We communicate through stories every day.
Yeah, and that's what connects us, isn't it?
Mm.
It's through the story that you can either see yourself in it, or or you don't feel a part of it.
Exactly. Amazing. And thank you for bringing up the book, because I know that you have done so well with that. I've been so proud of your journey and seeing you,
thank you,
do all these different things and make your dreams come true. Essentially, you kind of set yourself on that path, and you just do whatever it takes to get it done. So very proud of you for that. Thank you for sharing that with us. So what valuable lesson have you learned from a setback or failure in your business?
Gosh, there's been so many failures, setbacks. That is business, isn't it?
Yeah.
I would say what have I learned? Valuable lesson is that you can always, whatever it is, start from where you are, start from what you have, rather than getting bogged down with everything having to be perfect. Just start from what you have, and as time goes on, you can tweak it. So, and then you'll learn from it.
So, in regards to your work-life balance, how difficult has it been to raise your two children and manage your business and keep yourself sane?
Gosh, that is a daily objective. Yeah, trying to keep balanced in all areas of my life. I mean, it's starting a business with two young children is extremely challenging, because you're trying to get your head round the business that I've created, understanding my clients' needs, being able to create solutions for some of those needs, but then also, yeah, be present for the children and, yeah, my husband and extended family as well. It's extremely challenging. I'm not going to lie. Um, but I think over time, as they've gotten older, their needs have changed, and it's, yeah, they're obviously more independent. So how I support them is a lot different to when they were younger. But what I have really learned is around building your business around your life and not doing it the other way around. Obviously, when I started my business, my life worked around my business, and that's not healthy. But over time, and I'd say in the last few years, I've really tried to build my business around my life. Because I heard this really powerful statement, and it's stayed with me since. And it was that children spell love Tine.
Lovely.
Yeah. And so that really, well, yeah, it prompted me to actually be very intentional about scheduling family time.
Yeah.
I've always done stuff with my family because family is very, very important to me. However, yeah, I probably took it to the next level, but actually scheduling movie nights and things like that in my diary. So I've got that to look forward to, and just sort of talking it up with the family ahead of Friday evening or something like that. So it's something that we had to look forward to. So yeah, scheduling family time in my diary has been, yeah, a game changer for me, and it's helped to bring balance actually in my life.
Yeah, it's such an important part of maintaining that work-life balance, which you still have to have even when you run your own business and you're working from home.
Yes.
You know, because and even more so when you're working from home actually, because those lines of separation are not separate.
Exactly. It's all merged, isn't
It's
it?
all merged together.
Yeah.
So you kind of you definitely have to have that balance, and as you said, make that time for those moments, those memories, those that time with your children, so that
Yeah.
they kind of don't feel that the business is a priority over them.
Exactly. You don't want the business to be this horrible sibling that they wish never existed, because it does become like a baby, doesn't it? It
Yeah.
is, in effect, for me, it was like my third baby at some point. But yeah, you don't want it to be the baby that, yeah, that takes everything off track. So it's
Yeah.
important, yeah, spending the time with the children, but also with your partner as well, because that's the reality, isn't it? It does and can impact your relationships because you're so focused on the business that you might not be seeing, what else is going on around you.
It's funny. That I was going to say to you. The next question was like, what are your 3 tips for parentpreneurs who are thinking about starting a business? And I guess that would be one of them, is making that time,
Yes,
literally scheduling that time.
that's it. Yeah. We're able to do that with our clients and, things to do with our business. So let's also apply it to our family as well. Make that time.
Are there any other tips that you would share with someone starting a business who's a parent?
have a vision for your family. So just ask yourself, what is the vision I have for my family? And make sure that vision is factored into the way that you're building your business.
Mm.
Because you might approach it from the perspective that, okay, my business is here and my family is over here, which is next to it, but they're all one and the same. So
Yeah.
what does that actually look like when they come together? Just take that time out to think about, what is the vision I have for my family,
Mm.
and how can you incorporate that as part of your business
Yeah.
when you're doing your business plan?
Yeah, that's really great advice, actually. Yeah, because you don't generally say you have a vision for your business, but what is the vision for your family? What is the vision
Yes.
for your lifestyle, the way you want that to change?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really great advice. Thank you. Um, just going back to your profession and
Mm,
industry trends and predictions, what do you see as
mm,
the most significant trends or challenges in the inclusion and diversity space right now?
mm. Great question. I would say, that whole piece around cultural intelligence is really significant, especially, in a post-Brexit world where in the UK, particularly, they're looking to, attract and retain and develop talent from around the world because they've come out of the European Union. So that whole piece around understanding people's cultures and how they show up in the workplace so that you're actually able to develop the workforce of the future.
Mm.
Because there's always going to be gaps in our understanding. But if we are trying to attract people from different countries and different backgrounds, and when they come and work here, you could be dismissive or not respectful at all of somebody's culture, then yeah, that's going to impact the workplace, how people show up, how they contribute, and it's not going to be inclusive. Um, and I can give an example. So, I my background is um, Ghanaian and Barbadian, but I have a very strong Ghanaian influence. So growing up, um, yeah, I didn't really necessarily share my opinions on things because that's the kind of the Ghanaian culture. And it doesn't really, as a young person, you're not nobody generally wants to hear your opinion on anything. You just listen to the adult or the parent because they always seem to know the answers to everything. And actually, when I think about it, that also affected how I showed up in the workplace.
Mm.
And so, therefore, in team meetings, I wouldn't necessarily speak up, but I might have some ideas and I would then maybe contribute by speaking to either the manager on a one-to-one or sharing my idea with other members of the team, but I wouldn't necessarily speak up in a team meeting as such. And sometimes that can be perceived as, having low confidence or not being engaged
Mm.
in what's being said or what's going on. But that wasn't necessarily the case. But it's only now, kind of looking back, I can see that how my culture played a part in how I showed up in the workplace. And I think, yeah, looking towards the future, cultural intelligence is going to play a key part. in organisations, being able to attract, retain, and develop talent for the workforce in future.
Yeah, I definitely can relate to that as well, because it was something that I struggled with, and everyone used to say to me, "Oh, you're really shy. You don't talk very much." It's like, well, actually, I'm not.
Yeah.
But I've grown up being told, you speak when you're spoken to.
Yeah.
um, so and that's something that's quite prevalent in our cultures, as Black people. That it's definitely something that I'm not saying it's not prevalent in other cultures, but
Yes.
in our culture, it's something that's definitely something we've grown up with. It's like not, it's not something I necessarily say to my children now. So
Yes.
hopefully they're not gonna, grow up with that same mindset. But
Yeah.
I can definitely relate to that, not speaking up in meetings and people thinking you don't have confidence, or just that you're just very quiet. But
Yeah.
what it did serve me to do is be a very good listener. And to
And
be able
that's
to
very,
work people out,
yes.
just from listening.
And that's, yeah, very valuable skill to have.
Yeah.
And I think that whole piece around cultural intelligence, again, it links very nicely to the whole storytelling aspect. Yeah. So being able to, if you are a person that isn't part of the majority, I don't like using the word ethnic minorities because it's very disempowering, actually.
As well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was a phrase that somebody used that I quite liked, which is minoritized people from minoritized backgrounds. So it's labeled minority. Yeah, they're labeled as coming from minoritized backgrounds rather than they actually are minorities, if that makes sense. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't know. I kind of feel like I have a slight issue with the word minority as well. I mean,
Mm,
how are you labeling that word in terms
mm,
of, are you just calling the person a minority because they happen to be a minority in the country that they're in?
mm,
But when you think about it from a global perspective,
yes.
I, I don't think you can say that wholeheartedly. When
No.
you, from a global perspective, people from minority backgrounds, especially if you group them all together,
It's not, it's a majority,
what
isn't
is
it?
the majority?
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
it's interesting that even to me that word is even used.
Yeah.
And I always find, that words like that, and as you said, that's even, it always comes across to me as being very demoralizing.
And very disempowering.
Yeah, yeah, and
Very.
disempowering is a good word. So
I think that's why it's so important of sharing stories, sharing our stories and, our different backgrounds and our lived experiences, essentially, because that helps to bridge that gap in people's understanding
mm,
and helps to build that cultural intelligence.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So again, thinking about that, what markets do you feel do better when it comes to inclusivity and diversity?
Mm.
Are there any?
Yeah, certainly, like in my experience, what I have experienced is that companies that are in the media industry um, are slightly ahead of the curve, I guess, compared to the more traditional industries like the legal sector. So the media industry definitely, I think maybe because what they do is more visible,
Mm,
they definitely are proactive around, the diversity that can be seen. So there's that representation,
mm,
whether it's in the contents that they are producing, you know, on TV or online, you do get that visible representation.
Okay, so get into the crux of the conversation and personal branding. How important has it been for you to work on your personal brand to influence the success of your business brand?
Yeah, it's been really important working on my personal brand. Um, you know, I know you talk a lot about storytelling, and you know that whole piece around, you know, whatever you share, it will enable people to know, like, and trust you.
Mm.
And I've certainly taken that on board, you know, when I'm sharing stories or examples or, you know, lived experiences on LinkedIn. I always, you know, try and make sure it fits in with my personal brand, who I am, what I stand for, what I'm passionate about, which, yeah, if you haven't guessed already, storytelling is something I'm very passionate about, whether it's me sharing my lived experiences or being able to create space so other people can share their stories.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so working on my personal brand has been very, very important in that sense. And I think over time, with the stories that I have shared on LinkedIn, it has resonated with people. And off the back of that, you know, people have got in touch and we've been able to connect.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
and those stories tend to be, those personal stories tend to be the more popular ones, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, that's good to hear. And you know, is that the way that you think you're going to continue to enhance and grow your personal brand influence and leadership through
Yes.
storytelling?
I think so. I think so because that's really, it certainly seems to have resonated with people. I mean, I shared um I shared a story around my name, you know, it being Joyce. And I just always remember, like, way back when, whenever I'd introduce myself or say my name, there'd always be some sort of comment off the back of it. And I just shared that on LinkedIn. And the fact that recently I got to meet my namesake, the person I was actually named after, who was my mum's favourite cousin. And I'm sharing this because obviously Joyce is a key part of who I am. It's my name and it's also, yeah, part of my personal brand.
Mm.
But it was amazing how that story really resonated with people. It's got so many comments where people shared about their names as well and the impacts that had on them in their lives and their careers.
Mm.
So I definitely think, yeah, continuing to share those personal stories, it helps increase visibility. It helps people to yeah, get to know me, what I stand for, the work that I'm doing, and reaching out. So yeah, I'm definitely looking at sharing more stories, particularly on LinkedIn. Um, yeah,
Okay. I mean, it's funny you say that about names, and you know, I can tell you a story very quickly about
yeah,
my
please
own
do.
name.
I'm thinking, were you named after Dionne Warwick at all?
I think I was
Ah,
kind of,
okay.
but um, obviously my middle name is it starts with a P and it's Penelope, and it's
Okay.
actually my mum who wanted to call me Penelope,
Yeah.
and my dad said you can't call her that. So he was the one who actually called me Dion, and
Oh,
that's
okay.
why Penelope became my middle name. Thank
Mm,
you, Dad.
yes.
Because I hated it when I was growing up. Because once people knew what it was, they
Yeah.
immediately would start calling me Penelope Pitstop.
Yeah.
And you know, when you're a kid growing up, and anything that's remotely related to your name, or anything else that other children can make fun of,
Yeah.
you know, naturally creates a
Mm.
hate
Yes.
for it. So I was always very thankful to my dad for intervening and calling me Dion as opposed to
Penelope. Yeah.
so yeah, it's interesting how your name has an effect on who you are and how you actually, you know, see yourself, which is, you know, the same as with your personal brand. So that's
Absolutely.
brilliant
Absolutely.
to hear those stories. So final bonus question.
Yeah.
As you may know, BrandMe is in the process of developing a merchandise brand,
Mm-hmm.
and it's called Faces. And Faces stands for fearless, authentic, confident, exceptional,
Mm-hmm.
and successful.
Love it.
So when you think about all of those 5 words, and how you see your personal brand now, or how you'd like to see it in the future, which one of those would you say you relate to the most?
Oh,
So it's fearless, authentic, confident, exceptional, and successful.
they're all great words. So the question is, sorry, say the question again,
Which
please.
which one do you relate to the most in
Mm,
terms of your personal brand, either now or where you aspire to be?
mm. I would say fearless. And I say that because fear is something that is always with me in that sense. But I've done some work around fear. So I actually understand it now. And so when it shows up, I have that deeper understanding of what's going on here. And so being fearless is it's an aspiration. I don't think we ever get there, or you know, sometimes it doesn't show up in certain areas, but then in yeah, in new areas it does show up. So I'd say fearless is the word that connects, yeah, that I'm more connected with
It's funny,
and that I aspire to be.
everyone that I've asked that question to has said the same thing.
Seriously.
They've all chosen fearless.
Oh
It's
wow.
interesting.
That is so interesting. I would have
Mm,
thought authentic um, would have been the one actually. So that's interesting to know.
mm,
Everyone's going for fearless.
mm. I guess, you know, and you know, this wasn't done deliberately, but
No.
when I think about why I chose all those different words, and a couple of them have actually changed, and fearless was one of the ones that actually it was a different F.
Mm,
Um, but I chose, when you think about that word fearless in itself,
yeah.
you know, you can be fearlessly authentic. You know,
Yes.
being fearless helps you to be successful and
Mm,
confident
mm,
and exceptional.
mm.
So it kind of is the more it's the more pivotal word, I guess, that kind of helps to influence the rest of them.
You're right. You're
But I
absolutely
didn't
right.
think about it in that way when I was coming up with these different with that acronym. It didn't
Mm,
really um it wasn't the point of using that word fearless, but
yes.
now I'm thinking about it, it kind of it does lead into the rest of them. So
Yeah. Because once yeah, you don't have any fear, then you can be your whole self.
mm,
Yeah, there's no stopping you, isn't there? And by being your whole self, it increases your confidence. Yeah, it's like a virtuous kind of circle, isn't it?
definitely.
That is so interesting.
Amazing. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much for all of the great tips and advice, and your journey that you've shared today. It's been really great talking to you and learning about what you do, who you are, and who you serve. I am going to be dropping Joyce's links below this video, so please connect with her because she is an amazing person. And if you need anything in terms of inclusivity, diversity, or how to write a book,
Yes.
she is your go-to person.
I do that
Okay,
as well. Yeah.
brilliant. So thank you again. And yes, we'll look forward to seeing you on the next podcast.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
It's been
Thank you.
brilliant.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye, everyone.